Every weekend there's a big recruiting weekend. And this weekend it was in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So let's bring on Wolverine insider EJ Holland to talk about Michigan's big visit weekend. We had on campus QB Jadyn Davis, the #1 overall player for On3 edge Dylan Stewart, running back Jordan Marshall, cornerback Aaron Scott, and athlete Brandon Hillman. Now, he's from the 2023 class. We're going to get into that at the end. I got some questions there. But let's start at the top with Jadyn Davis. This has been a much anticipated visit to Ann Arbor. What are you hearing coming on the heels of his trip?
Yeah, Jadyn Davis is the most important target on Michigan's quarterback board, or on the board overall. I mean, he's the only quarterback on the board. Michigan has taken an all your eggs in one basket approach, so they haven't really actively recruited any other quarterback. But Jadyn Davis has been the guy. He's always been the guy. Last summer, it seemed like Michigan really took command in that recruitment. They got him on campus multiple times in the fall. He was expected to commit in December. That didn't happen. He's expected to commit in January. That didn't happen. This visit was really key in him and his family meeting new quarterbacks coach Kirk Campbell. From everything I gathered, things went really, really well. Of course, it's up to Jim Harbaugh to close here. Harbaugh's the guy with the quarterback experience. I mean, played quarterback in Michigan, played quarterback in the NFL, coached great quarterbacks. I mean, he's the guy that's going to ultimately lead to Jadyn Davis shutting it down. But optimism coming out of Ann Arbor, coming out of this weekend. I do feel like Michigan's done enough to finally seal the deal. I know we've said that in the past, but there's no real question marks anymore. I mean, Jim Harbaugh's staying.
The question is, when is the deal going to get sealed? I mean,
Right.
That is the question.
Right. But I'm saying there's no more question marks for Jadyn Davis and his family. I mean, there's no more excuses, I guess you can say. You know, Jim Harbaugh's staying. Kirk Campbell's the quarterback's coach. Sharon Moore is the offensive coordinator. There's no more questions there. Michigan's winning on the field. NIL deals are there. J.J. McCarthy can point to that.
Right.
So I think the time is now. Jadyn has said that he wants to commit before the end of the month. I do think Michigan gets it done. If they don't get it done, then, you're running into some issues here because you're going to be behind on other quarterbacks. And so I've been in favor of expanding the board for a while, but if this all your eggs in one basket finally pays off, then you can't knock it too much. So we'll see if Jadyn Davis goes ahead and makes a decision. I think he will, but like I said, we've said it in the past, so we'll see if it actually comes.
So EJ, just to clarify, you're telling me that you think that there's a good chance in the next, let's just say 2 or 3 weeks, that the Wolverines finally get their quarterback for the 24 class?
I'd say there's a 70 to 75% chance it gets done.
Okay. All right. That's fair. All right. Let's move on to 5-star edge Dylan Stewart. Not just a 5-star edge, but the On3 #1 overall player. Now, EJ, Michigan, although they're winning on the football field, they didn't land a 5-star prospect last cycle. Kind of confusing. So why do you think that Michigan has a shot at the #1 overall player, Dylan Stewart?
Well, first of all, I love Dylan Stewart. Loved him since last year. Saw him at a Ray Lewis camp. I think Charles Power did a great job with that evaluation, taking a different lane and making him the #1 overall prospect in the country. But the reason I think that Michigan actually has a legitimate shot here is simple. Dylan Stewart's main goal is to get to the NFL. Michigan develops edge guys. You can point to Aiden Hutchinson. You can point to David Ajabo. You can point to Mike Morris in this draft. So the edge production is there. That's something that really, really stands out to Dylan Stewart. So I think Michigan has a legitimate shot here. He's now been to campus twice. He was also on campus last year. I think Michigan is a strong contender to receive an official visit. Of course, it's going to be tough to win this battle. I mean, you have Alabama in the mix. You have Georgia in the mix. South Carolina, Ohio State, Miami. Some of those programs have really strong NIL programs, and it'll be interesting to see how much of a factor that becomes in the Dylan Stewart race. But as of right now, I mean, Michigan checks a lot of boxes for him. I'm not saying Michigan's going to land Dylan Stewart, but they are an actual contender in this race.
Okay, I'll take your word for it there. Now, running back Jordan Marshall, the Wolverines looking for an elite back in 24. Marshall is one of the top names on the board at running back. So how did his visit go to Michigan, and when do you think he wraps up his recruitment?
A great second visit in the last 3 months. Looking to make a decision maybe late summer. Recently released a top four. Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Tennessee are the four schools in the running. Mostly think this is an Ohio State Michigan battle, though
A
Wisconsin
classic
is a bit
battle.
of a dark horse. Yeah. Classic battle. Michigan hasn't won a lot of those battles lately. They did get one here with Brandon Hillman, who we'll talk about in a bit. But I do think that Jordan Marshall is a legitimate candidate to leave enemy territory and pick Michigan. Right now, I think it's 50-50. I think Michigan might actually have the slight advantage today. But with Ohio State getting the last OV, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, that would be a statement recruitment right there if Michigan could beat Ohio State for Jordan Marshall. Lockdown corner Aaron Scott was also on campus. He's an a potential important piece to Michigan's class. How was his visit, and when does he decide?
Yeah, kind of the same thing as Jordan Marshall. You're going head to head with Ohio State for an
Mm-hmm.
Ohio kid, a very highly touted Ohio kid. I think, again, Michigan's a top contender here. I think it's going to come down to Ohio State, Michigan. I think Aaron Scott's another guy like Marshall that really sees the benefits of playing at a place like Michigan. The opportunity is also there to come in and play almost immediately at the corner spot. Right now, Michigan has Will Johnson and everybody else. So I think that's a big selling point for Aaron Scott. And much like Jordan Marshall, we'll see how the chips fall during summer official visit season.
All right, now let's talk about 2023 athlete Brandon Hillman. When Jaden Rashada asked out of his letter of intent, it seemed like it made national news, coast to coast. Everybody's talking about Jaden Rashada's recruitment and how he's asking out of his NLI to the Florida Gators. Well, 2023 athlete Brandon Hillman asked out of his NLI to Notre Dame. He was granted his release. Now, it seems like he's going to end up being a Wolverine, but walk us through how all this played out.
Yeah, definitely an interesting scenario. Not very much like the Rashada saga. I think that one was quite the NIL issue. But he was able to get out of that pretty quickly. And Michigan offered 90 minutes after he was granted his release. They were on it. He was on it, every single day. Was able to lock in an official visit with Hillman. There was a lot of optimism going into the visit. At the same time, I visited with Hillman at his high school on Thursday, and he told me, I want to make my other two official visits because the second time around, I want to be fully sure. I want it to be a decision that's going to be made and going to sign. And so Ohio State was in line to get an official from him after Michigan. They were very, very close to setting a date. And instead, Jay Harbaugh did a great job of just closing this weekend. And you saw Brandon Hillman announce his commitment simply with a photo that said committed with him holding a sign in Michigan gear, which was pretty cool. It was just one of those things where Jay Harbaugh did a great job closing. His pitch was you can get everything you wanted at Notre Dame here at Michigan and more. And I think that holds true. Michigan's a great academic institution. They've won on the field more recently than Notre Dame. So I feel like everything checked the box there for Hillman, and he felt at home. So he said, why not? And he signed that same day as well.
So how good is Hillman, and what does he add to Michigan's roster?
Yeah, definitely. So we obviously walking through that recruitment, we didn't talk about him as a player at all, but he's really filled out at 6'1", 190 pounds, played high school quarterback. He was a guy that passed for 1,000 yards, rushed for 1,000 yards, scored 33 total touchdowns. He was an all-region pick as a defensive back and as a punter as well. But like I said, Jay Harbaugh recruited him, and he is going to be a safety at Michigan. He has a lot of athleticism. He smacks people. He's a guy with great closing speed as well. He's still a little raw, hasn't played a ton of safety, kind of played defensive back part-time. Like I said, was still an all-region pick, but mostly focused on being a quarterback at the high school level. So he is a guy that's going to need some development, but all the tools are there for him to really excel at a place like Michigan. I think the upside is super high.
All right, Michigan fans, do me a favor, like this video and subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. We have all your needs when it comes to recruiting. We also have a ton of college football news as well. Hit that subscribe button for me. Thank you. All right, EJ. Also, there was four-star edge Darren Mayo. He was on campus. He's the #1 player in Maryland, and he's a top 100 overall prospect. So take into account all the players that were there on this big visit weekend. In which of these do you see signing with Michigan in the end? Do you think that they can haul in any of the big names that were on campus this weekend?
I mean, Mayo is certainly a possibility. When you look at him, kind of the same thing as Dylan. Mayo and Dylan Stewart were the only two pass rushers on campus, and so they got the staff's full attention. I had a great conversation with Mayo yesterday as he was leaving campus, and he told me that he had an hour-long meeting with Jim Harbaugh that went extremely well. He really connected with guys like Elston and Ronnie, who I mentioned when talking about Stewart. He knows Michigan's success developing pass rushers. Michigan has had recruiting success at his high school. Good counsel. Michigan's defensive lineman Chris Jenkins was very involved in recruiting Mayo this weekend. Jenkins is a good counsel alum. So I think Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas are probably those schools high on Mayo's mind, Clemson as well. But I think Michigan has as good of a shot as anybody. I mean, when you have the success that Michigan's had with pass rushers, that's obviously very appealing. So I think Mayo will get back for an OV, and I think Michigan is in a really, really good spot to land him, especially since they're also high up on the list for his teammate and on 300 linebacker Aaron Childs, who visited last weekend. In terms of other guys that could sign, obviously we mentioned Jadyn Davis as a real possibility to sign. We'll see kind of 50-50 here on Jordan Marshall, Aaron Scott. Some other names to really know: Ben Roebuck, 3-star offensive lineman out of Ohio. Michigan's continuing to rebuild that bridge into enemy territory, which we talked about. Ben Roebuck is a key offensive line target. I think the Wolverines are in a strong position to land him. And another name I'll throw out there is Blake Frazier. On 300 offensive lineman out of Austin Vandegrift. He is a legacy recruit. He is the son of Steve Frazier, who snapped for the GOAT Tom Brady during his time in Ann Arbor. So obviously that connection's strong. I think Michigan leads there, though others like Clemson, Texas A&M, Oregon are also very involved with Frazier. But I think at the end of the day, Michigan has the lead there. And lastly, Brady Prescorn, top 100 tight end, in-state prospect out of Rochester Adams. A lot of connections to Michigan, has been to Ann Arbor on multiple occasions. I think the Wolverines have the slight edge there. Prescorn is very, very quiet, doesn't do hardly any interviews, isn't very active on social media. But from everything we've been able to gather over at the Wolverine, Michigan continues to feel optimistic, especially after this weekend's visit.
It sounds great, EJ. It sounds great. Big visit weekend, lots to be excited about. But I was on the message board this morning, and there seems to be a bit of concern about the lack of commitments. So, EJ, where are all the commitments right now?
Look at you, Josh, on the fort, man. Come join the discussion with all our great members there. No, I mean, look, everybody wants commitments. I think they're going to happen. I think it's a matter of, when, not if. I think you can really start seeing dominoes roll if Jadyn Davis finally gets in the class. If I'm right and he does commit in the next 2 to 3 weeks, then I think that's going to lead to quite a few commitments. Like Michigan has the lead for several prospects. I mentioned Aaron Childs, Ben Roebuck, Blake Frazier, Brian Robinson. There are other guys like Channing Goodwin. All these guys have been to campus in the last couple months. I think once you get that quarterback to really lead the class, which Michigan hasn't had since J.J. McCarthy, who is already a junior, I think it's going to be kind of a snowball effect. I mean, everything's there for Michigan. Obviously, like we said, great program on and off the field, back-to-back Big Ten titles, back-to-back college football playoff appearances. Jim Harbaugh staying. The staff is mostly intact other than the weird, Matt Weiss computer situation. basically everybody's coming back. You added another elite recruiter in Chris Partridge from Ole Miss, who's the new linebackers coach. So the staff is ready to go. Everything's in place for Michigan to finish with a top 10 class, to get back, in the right direction on the recruiting trail. I think it happens soon. I think, it's a little hard for our fans to have some patience, but I don't think you'll have to be patient for much longer.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump on the message boards as soon as we get out of here and tell them all that just have a little patience. It's building. You can feel it, though. In all seriousness, you can feel the momentum building. I do agree with you. I think once Jadyn Davis hops on, you'll see kind of the class fill out from there. Exciting times up there in Ann Arbor. EJ, thank you for checking in on the Inside Scoop.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me, and remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.